The film titled The Killer, released in 2023, opens with a scene of a professional hitman known simply as The Killer on assignment in Paris. At the start, we see him inside an abandoned building, patiently waiting to assassinate a high-profile target. He's been watching from a distance for days, sticking to a strict routine while listening to his favorite songs. Throughout his career, the killer has never failed a mission. He's extremely disciplined, lives by a firm set of principles, shows no emotion or empathy, and always remains calm under pressure. He works alone, leaves no trace, and carries out every job with precision. One night, as hotel staff prepare a room for the target, the killer gets ready soon. The elderly man arrives, apparently the target, accompanied by a call girl. Without hesitation, the killer lines up his sniper shot. But just as he pulls the trigger, the woman steps into his line of fire and is accidentally killed instead, and the target survives. Chaos erupts. The target's bodyguards rush to secure the area, while the killer quickly escapes, destroying any evidence he brought with him. Once things settle down, he heads to the airport, planning to lay low back in his hometown. From the airport, he calls his boss to confess that he missed the shot. Shocked, since this is the first time the killer has ever failed, the boss urges him to finish the job. But the killer refuses, saying he's ready to retire. His boss coldly warns him not to regret the decision. On the plane, the killer senses someone watching him. During a layover, the same man continues eyeing him suspiciously. Feeling uneasy, the killer delays his next flight and checks into a hotel for the night, suspecting the man might be a cop or a spy. In the hotel room, he sets traps, just in case someone tries to attack him. The next morning, when it seems safe, he boards a new flight. Eventually, the killer arrives in the Dominican Republic, his hometown and safe house. But as he reaches his front gate, he notices footprints and cigarette butts scattered around. Alarmed, he hurries inside, fearing something terrible may have happened to his wife. When the killer finally entered his house, he was shocked. The entire place had been ransacked, everything was a mess, and bloodstains were everywhere. Worst of all, his wife was missing. Fearing the worst, he rushed to the nearest hospital. And there, his fears were confirmed. His wife was in a coma, guarded by her older brother. The killer asked what happened. Her brother explained that two unknown people had suddenly shown up at the house, attacked his wife, and left her unconscious. They had come in a green taxi, and no one knew where they went afterward. Hearing this, the killer promised to hunt them down and make them pay. He returned home and dug up his weapons, which he had previously buried for safekeeping. The next day, he went to the local taxi terminal to track down the green cab. But since there were many green taxis in the area, it wasn't easy. Eventually, he found the owner of the taxi fleet. Without wasting time, the killer pointed his gun at him and demanded to see the route logs from the previous day. After a thorough search, he identified the cab that had dropped the two attackers at his house. He then tracked down the driver, who often worked around the city center. The next day, the killer spotted the same green taxi and got in, pretending to be a passenger. Midway through the ride, he pulled a gun on the driver and interrogated him. The driver swore he didn't know the passengers. He was just doing his job. But he described them. One was a large man, and the other was a thin woman with white hair. That was all the killer needed. Without hesitation, he executed the driver. Later that day, he headed to the airport. His next destination, New Orleans. He believed the attackers were sent by his own boss, the same boss who had threatened him after he walked away from his last mission. Once he arrived in New Orleans, he rented a van and planned his next move carefully. The killer decided to approach his boss in disguise. Posing as an AC technician, he gained access to the building. The next morning, he confidently walked in, carrying his fake work order. He made it inside with ease and quickly pulled a gun on the boss's assistant, Anna. Holding her at gunpoint, he forced her to bring him to the boss's office and tie the man to his chair. He then tied up Anna and locked her in the bathroom. Alone with his former boss, the killer began the interrogation. He demanded to know who had been sent to hurt his wife. The betrayal stung. The killer had been loyal for years and always got the job done. And now this? The boss admitted it was meant to be a warning. He said the killer had disobeyed direct orders, and this was the consequence. Hearing this, the killer snapped. In a fit of rage, he brutally killed his boss before he could reveal any useful information.
That's where it began.
He then returned to Anna, still locked in the bathroom. He planned to kill her too, to leave no loose ends. But Anna begged for her life, pleading that if she had to die, it should look like an accident, so her child could claim her life insurance. In exchange, she offered to give the killer the names and full addresses of the two attackers, info she claimed to have saved at home. Reluctantly, the killer agreed, and together, they set off for Anna's house. Once they arrived at Anna's house, she immediately gave detailed information about the two people who attacked his wife. Not only that, she also handed over the client data who had ordered the killer to eliminate the old man at the beginning of the film. Feeling that he had everything he needed, the killer executed Anna, staging her death to look like she accidentally fell down the stairs, just as she'd requested, so that her children could still claim her life insurance. The next day, the killer was seen traveling to Florida. According to Anna's information, one of the men who assaulted his wife lived there. Once he arrived at the location, he scoped out the target's house from a distance. He saw the man surrounded by a few henchmen and also noticed a pit bull guarding the property, aggressive and ready to attack anyone who got too close. Realizing it would be dangerous to go in unprepared, the killer backed off and headed to a nearby supermarket. There, he bought ground beef and laced it with poison, his way of taking care of the dog before making his move. That night, he returned to the house with the poisoned meat. He sneaked in and tossed the meat to the pit bull. Once he was sure the dog was dead, he entered the house through the back. But just a few steps in, the killer was ambushed by the man, leading to a brutal hand-to-hand fight.
Wrong house, motherfucker.
Things got worse when another pit bull, turns out there were two, chased after him. Fortunately, the killer managed to escape and then set the house on fire, leaving nothing behind.
Takes.
The following day, the killer flew to New York to find the second target, a white-haired woman who was also involved in the attack on his wife. Once in the city, he headed straight to her address, which Anna had provided.
For an active.
That evening, he spotted the woman preparing to head into the city. Without wasting time, he followed her. She ended up at a restaurant, and the killer confronted her directly.
Well.
As soon as she saw him, her face turned pale with fear. She knew her time was up. In a desperate attempt to stall him, the woman invited the killer to sit down and eat first before doing what he came to do. But the killer declined, suspicious that she might have poisoned the food. She began apologizing and begging for mercy, claiming she was only following orders from the killer's former boss and that his wife hadn't even been killed. She hoped he'd spare her. The killer said nothing but told her to follow him to a nearby park to talk in private. Once they reached the park, that's when the killer made his move. After taking out the woman, the killer flew to Paris to find one final target, the client who had assigned him the mission to eliminate the old man at the beginning of the film. Thanks to the address Anna had provided earlier, it didn't take long for him to locate the man. The killer kept a close eye on him, suspecting that this client might have been the one who ordered the killer's boss to go after his wife, possibly as revenge for the failed mission. When the client left his apartment, the killer snuck inside and took a photo of his room key. The next day, he had a duplicate made and returned to the apartment. This time, he entered the room easily and pointed a gun at the client, demanding to know why he had ordered the attack on his wife.
I'm not going to be having replaced you soon. No? Okay.
But the client swore he had nothing to do with it. He said he never gave such an order and, in fact, didn't even care that the previous mission had failed. He revealed that he had already hired a different assassin to eliminate the old man scene at the beginning of the film. Hearing this, the killer believed him and decided to let him live. With that, the killer walked away. Everyone who had taken part in the attack on his wife was now gone. A few weeks later, we see the killer back at home. He's made up his mind to leave behind the life of a hitman and live a normal life with his wife, who has now fully recovered. They're finally ready to start fresh together.
And we're all given. Just like me.
And with that, the film ends.